Alright, as you said, my name's Ross. I guess the best way to introduce myself is what most of my life was. I've been a liar, a cheat, a thief, somebody with drug addiction issues, and someone with lived experience of mental illness. I've also been egocentric and incredibly self-deprecating. That's not my experience now, but I share it that way because that's what I have the most experience living. I'd like to get into a quote and then some other things, and I'll kind of get into my story and try to leave time for you guys to ask me some questions. My fault, my failure is not in the passions I have, but in my lack of control of them. And that was said by Jack Kerouac. In my personal experience, even now that I no longer use drugs and I'm in a good place mentally for the most part, I can still become so obsessed or centered on certain things that things that I should be doing kind of fall to the wayside. Obsession and compulsion is a big part of my life experience overall. And before I get into my story, I'd kind of like to share some different things that I've thought throughout my life, and like you guys, maybe try picturing what it would be like not only thinking them but believing them and actually living with these thoughts in your head. The first one is your significant other is an alien intent on placing various implants for tracking, controlling you, and preventing you from becoming the best person you can be. Also maybe like selling you to some alien slave traders or something like that. Your own mother is actually not your mother, but has been replaced and is communicating with some agency to prevent you from becoming the best person you can be. See, that's one of the things about being self-centered and egotistical. It's all about me and all of these. There are microphones and video cameras in your walls and house so the world can watch your life like a reality show. You're living the Truman Show. And with that kind of concept, I literally thought at one point that celebrities were watching me because their lives were so crazy they wanted to see my boring, ass, mundane life of living with the experiences I had had. The world is coming to an end and you have to rush to get onto a ship that will take you off the earth into safety. The sun has exploded, you have been recreated with your exact consciousness and placed into a quote-unquote living museum so that people of the future can see the one who ended the world. Because I thought that my actions and I had such low self-worth that I literally thought that I had caused the world to end. You're such a vile, despicable person, your very soul will be extinguished forever. And this is the last one. The very people who are trying to help you are actually trying to hurt you and have an agenda beyond your best interest. And the previous examples were only several snowflakes in the avalanche of my mind. And I'd like to say this one last quote and then I'll get into my story quickly. Mental illness is not abnormal. It is a normal reaction to abnormal circumstances. And for me, those circumstances that were abnormal is the way that I perceived reality from my experiences. One of my first memories proved that I was different than a lot of other people. Looking back, I remember that there was this goldfish pond outside of my mother and father's house in Columbiana. I was probably 4 or 5 or so, maybe even younger. And there was these little goldfish in this bathtub and it was off the side of the porch, and I remember going like this and just falling into it. It was placid, peaceful, and tranquil before that, and my turbulent impulsivity rippled throughout it afterwards. And that's probably one of the best analogies for my life overall, was that impulsive action and that recklessness disturbing all the tranquility of my experience. When I first realized I was different, this is another thing, like looking back, my aunt committed suicide when I was 5 or 6, and I can remember walking around in November thinking about what it would be like when I died, which I don't think a lot of 5 or 6 year olds think like that. And then my concept of it was I would just be in this cold, dark blackness alone for the rest of my life. So right there, my thinking was a bit different. I've had a big history of interactions with police officers. The first time I was ever arrested was in 6th grade. I couldn't sleep. I went out and vandalized some stuff. Eventually I got pulled out of class for all the things that I vandalized, put on probation. My next experience with police would be in high school. I was pulled out of class for having pot on me, put into the drug court program, and I was in and out of the JJC because I wouldn't stop using pot, because it was something that made me feel normal somewhat and kind of got me outside of how I felt internally, because I felt horrible. The major issues in my life that really shaped my early life was the suicide of my aunt, the divorce of my parents, and then my father remarrying and kind of like forgetting all about me. That's how I perceived it, at least. Let me put that caveat on there. After the high school arrest, I just got more and more into drugs that I obviously didn't stop. I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous at 17 years old. And for me, looking at all those groups of people, I was like, these are a bunch of dried up, boring Jesus junkies. They don't have any fun anymore. I know what fun is. And looking back now, I can see all the turbulence and trauma I caused other people. Also, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was 13, but I didn't like the way the medication made me feel, so I didn't take it. So that's that part of my life, really. I eventually went to culinary school because I wanted to move away from this area. That was this big party fest. I moved out to Las Vegas, which obviously is a great place for a drug addict. Eventually I got a DUI out there. I was fortunate that I only got one within the city, and it was probably the lowest blood alcohol content I had. I was on my way to the party when I got pulled over. After that, things fell apart with the relationship I had out there. I was getting ready to move to Washington State to work at a summer camp. I was unaware that I had a warrant out for my arrest, because I had magical thinking and the thoughts that, like, oh, there's that DUI that I want, that just went away without me having to do anything. They didn't send me anything, so nothing came of it. That's great. Leaving Las Vegas, actually around Jackpot, Nevada, I got pulled over with pot in my system. I got a DUI, or DWI, whatever they call it out there, on a suspended license with a warrant out for my arrest for failure to appear. Needless to say, that was not looked very kindly upon. I got out of that situation because my family bailed me out, which is kind of a reoccurring thread in a lot of my experiences with the law. And I don't fault them for it. They did what was best, but in some regards, maybe I would have got things quicker if I just would have had to face the consequences on a long term. But everything has a reason, so I'm grateful that they did what they did, I guess, because I wouldn't be here without the exact set of experiences I had. After that, I got bailed out. I went to that summer camp, worked there for a bit, quit there, ended up being homeless for a bit, homeless on the beach in Northern California, traveled back to Las Vegas, drinking and drugging, ended up moving back to Ohio. Then I moved out to California again. There's a lot of different traveling in my story and bouts of homelessness. And I just partied out there. I was in Emerald Triangle, which is like the pot capital of the United States, at least. So it was like a stoner's dream to be out there. And I worked at a bar and grill, and they had like 20 beers on tap. So it was all I could drink, all I could smoke. And at the time, I thought that was great. The issue was all the things that I had been running from and trying to cover up began to fester and spoil pretty much everything. Eventually, I got in a relationship with a woman who was she also had a history of mental illness and stuff like that, although mine hadn't become pronounced yet. It's obviously there looking back. She also had an issue with substance abuse. Her and I's relationship was rocky, like all the romantic relationships I had been in. Had been very horrible to women. But that's a whole different topic. Eventually, her and I came to a point where we decided we wanted to quit drinking, which is, it's a good thing, you would think. I didn't quit smoking pot, and the other issue is I didn't do anything to deal with, I didn't develop coping skills. So progressively over that period of time, I became more and more stressed out. And eventually, it's actually almost 5 years to the date, I had a psychotic break, psychosis induced by mania. I started not sleeping, started having some auditory hallucinations, started to think that people were out to get me, the government was out to get me, all this kind of stuff. Fortunately, I've never been a violent person. I don't have the frame for violence in any way, shape, or form. Not that that prevents certain people, but I've never been violent. So this situation was kind of monitored by my now ex-girlfriend, and she never called the cops because she just figured, she knew something was going on, but she didn't know what to do really. Eventually, I don't really specifically know how it happened. One of my family members, I called them, they called somebody at work, and then they called the cops or something. But I was walking down the street and was picked up by the police. They stopped me and they started to talk to me, and they were asking what was going on. And at that time, I was trying to get somewhere before the sun went down, because I was assumed that once the sun went down, this different form of people who were the evil people were out, and that I was going to get attacked, but I had to get to this certain place. And then while they were talking to me, there was the good cop, bad cop, but to a whole different extreme, where one was literally the incarnation of all that is good, and the other one was pure evil. But they were transitioning who was the good one and bad one through their eyes. If one looked at the other one, that one was a good one, then he would be the good one, then good one, bad. It's ridiculous to say now, which I'm grateful that I can understand that now. They picked me up, got me in the car, they asked me who I was, didn't even know my name. I thought I was the singer Jack Johnson. I tried to tell them about the songs that I had written, but I couldn't remember any of them because my head was so scrambled. They were taking me to the psych unit, which I really thought was a place where they would shoot me off Earth so I could contact or connect with the real humans, because I didn't think I was with the real humans, because I couldn't understand how people treat each other the way that they do. And even in good mental health, I don't get how people treat other people the way that they do. I understand that it's selfishness and ego, but that's a whole philosophical argument. So yeah, that was psychosis. Essentially what I lost from that, job, relationship, all my friends, any understanding of self-worth, any concept of spirituality that I had, because I have atypical spiritual beliefs, and a lot of people would view them as crazy, even though a lot of other people have similar beliefs. It's not really. Spirituality is something that's out there regardless, in my experience. They put me on medication, diagnosed me as bipolar 1, having a manic episode. I ended up moving back to this area. Things kind of flatlined for a bit, went back to work, stopped taking the medication, started drinking again, started drugging. Shortly thereafter, within 8 months of that, I got another DUI. So that was 3 DUIs in a period of probably 5 or 6 years. After that, I pretty much stopped working because I couldn't handle the stress. I wanted to quit smoking pot, so I bought all these different legal herbs and different things. Some of them I reduced down, some of them I smoked, some of them I mixed with pot. Eventually, I can remember sitting on the couch with my mom and feeling this buzzing in my head and thinking that alien ship was hovering over my head and scanning my consciousness, and that my ex-girlfriend from California, who I hadn't talked to in a year, was trying to communicate with me telepathically that I needed to do yoga in order to repair our relationship, which wasn't even there because I stopped talking to her. Needless to say, that experience wound me up in the psych ward. It was terrifying, and like the gentleman before me had shared, I was really good at covering up the fact of some of the things I was thinking. I wasn't just like, yeah, I totally believe my ex-girlfriend's communicating with me from California. Because I really believed that these people were out to get me and were trying to prevent these things from happening. Eventually, I forget how long I was there, they put me on other medication, and then this whole roller coaster ride of being on medication, being off medication, being in the psych ward, being out of the psych ward, doing drugs, drinking, this pretty much lasted for a year of pure psychosis and stuff. So in my life, I was probably psychotic for a total of a year and 3 months or something. I don't really know. Eventually, in that the psychosis stopped being frightening so much, and it actually started to be something that made me evaluate my life, and somewhat got me on the right track. I stepped away from drinking, and prior to entering recovery this past September, I'd only been drunk 2 or 3 times within 2 years, which was pretty good for me because I would drink whiskey and multiple beers before noon a lot of times. But that was the start of things. Then I started to work on myself, look at myself. Eventually I got involved with other things, with the National Alliance on Mental Illness. My life changed a lot, and then through that I entered a 12-step program. My clean date is 9/2 of last year, so I'm coming up on a year. A year ago, this whole thing of talking about all these experiences would terrify the shit out of me. Like, it's almost making me tear up to think of how far I've really come. You don't really hear people talk about those experiences because a lot of people will judge you for stuff like that. Like, I'm a normal guy, beyond having those ridiculous experiences. And for me, that's how I try to cope with not understanding things. And it doesn't make it right how I acted, all the thieving, all that stuff, which I didn't get into. But I said it at the beginning, I'm a thief and all that stuff, so I threw it out there. One of the things that helped me, though, is the police that brought me in there, is the police that treated me like a human being. I had a lot of anger at police for a very long time from how I was treated at a young age and how I was treated at different times where they came at me aggressively and all this stuff. I've always tried to be respectful in those situations. I'm obviously not a very threatening person. Even when I was 5, and it's cool. Like, I've never been like that guy. Recovery's been awesome to me. This is my 9th time sharing my story, and it's so surreal for me to look back at 5 years ago is when all this really, the meat and potatoes of my life started. There's 2 more quotes I'd like to get into, and then I'll open the floor up for any questions or anything anybody has. They wander in darkness seeking light, failing to realize that the light is in the heart of the darkness. That was said by Manly P. Hall. For me, what that means is I've never had a life purpose prior to that. I just kind of drifted through life. All my strength, all the things that matter to me came from all that difficult stuff. And you don't typically hear people say they've overcome a lot of that stuff. I'm no longer on medication for that. My doctor said I'm actually in a good position. I no longer have the desire to use drugs. I participate in my community like shit that if you told me that a year ago, I'd be like, that's stupid. Like, life means something to me now, and a large part of that was the police officers who got me into treatment by respecting me and treating me well. That's pretty powerful to me. And this is one thing that I've learned. The content of your character is your choice. Day by day, what you choose, what you think, and what you do is who you become. And that's so true to me. And I think that's true for everybody. It's like what you put into yourself that matters. I've had great experiences with cops and bad ones, but the thing is, they're all people at the end of the day, just like people with mental illness are people. And there's going to be some that are assholes and some that are good people. And yeah, that's all I really have. If you guys have any questions, I appreciate it. And just thank you for your time. I'm grateful to be in a position where I can be here and have your attention and hold this space. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have questions? No questions?
You had a pretty eventful life. How old are you?
33.
Did a lot.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff in there too, but it doesn't really make a good story if I tell all the good times. But yeah, I've seen some things.
So now he's in recovery.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I do a houses and institutions meeting for the 12-step program I'm in, where I try to bring recovery to other people or share the message that helped me. get to do things like this, let people know that you do make a difference by treating people with respect. Not that you don't know, but maybe, I don't know if you get to hear the results of of your actions sometimes. So I have a lot of respect for you. And it's so amazing to me that how my life has brought me to a complete 180 on how I perceive police. And granted, I do it on an individual basis, like who I really like, but for the most part, as a whole, I view you as people trying to help. There's bad seeds like there is anywhere, but yeah, I just appreciate respect, and without knowing y'all, I love y'all for doing what you do and putting your heart out there, putting your life out there to help people, and it's pretty amazing. Oh, my timer's going off telling me to shut up.
Thank you a lot, Ross.
Thank you.
Okay.